Hey everybody, welcome back to another film of the week. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Just FYI, I'm gonna be talking a little bit lower. It's just a little bit late on the house or in the house, so just want to keep my voice down out of respect for my family. Um, but we're back with another film of the week, and this one is quite the interesting piece to talk about, and that film being Mirror or The Mirror, depending on how you find it. Some people label it as Mirror, some people just call it The Mirror. In any case, however, it is written, and directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, who's done many notable films, one of which, Solaris, which I deeply enjoy. Stalker, which I've been very anxious to watch, and hopefully will watch sometime in the future when I have the time to, or whenever I get around to it. Um, Among other films, The Sacrifice being another one, um, and to to give um, um, to give a sense of story, I think would be kind of doing disservice to what the mirror is ultimately trying to do, because it's a very unconventional um, type of presentation that the film chooses to deliver. Um, because what I can say what the movie is about ultimately is um, is that it's a piece of self reflection, really, because that's ultimately the sensibility, the the lingering idea that is at play when watching these images play, because it's a very abstract approach to its ideas, because it's a film about ideas. Ultimately, it's a film about um, about meanings, um, about inevitability, about the longing for simplicity, about considerations of one's current positions, um, and the reflection, hence the title, um, that that is taken to look at what could have been and what is, in order to understand their position, their current position. Um, and it's an aura that is quite demanding in asking questions. It's a film that demands you to ask questions, almost entirely, um, because it's a film that also gives a lot of room for meaningful discussion and interpretation to take place. Even though I think that mostly what is held together is this lingering idea of self-reflection, because that to me seems to be the only appropriate idea at play when you consider the title and considering the approach that is taken with said film. Because there's many different jumping around in terms of, because there's the idea of also about time at the center of it, because of how unconventional the film is structured. We go from at one point where characters are older, and other points where characters are younger, and then other points where we're in black and white, and other points where we're in color. Like all these visual representations and these visual ideas cemented this idea to me that it's a portrait of self-reflection and about inevitability. Um, and while those ideas I really did appreciate, and visually the film is quite impressive, as is its screenplay. I think that it's just a piece of poetry, to be quite honest. And I love the intention in its editing. It's again, like I said, a film that wishes to have discussions. It's a film that wishes to have interpretation. It's not a film that is upfront with what it's about. It's a film that just kind of lets its visuals and lets everything kind of, you know uh, it kind of just like puts visuals together and just says, okay, well, what do you make of this, you know? And to its benefit, mostly, it creates um, for a very interesting narrative. Though I do think that those sensibilities can become quite tedious at points, and my attention did vary. There was a challenge in terms of my attention, um, but I found it to be very fascinating at the end of the day, and it is dense in representation and also dense in terms of feeling, because your navigation through this, you're just like, you're trying to get the idea, you're trying to figure it out, and you have it, but there's a lot of things that come about that kind of throw you off the scent, and then ultimately you come back to the idea that you have stuck with. And I do believe that what the movie is about is ultimately this idea of self-reflection, because I don't see where else the title would make sense. Um, there's also a commentary about warfare, about the destructive capabilities, the effects that war has to those who choose to fight, as well as those who choose to stay behind. Hence, perhaps that suggestion, within the title, um, or perhaps what that title might be suggesting. But I'm not going to sit here and say that visually I understand mostly what's going on. That's why, I'm kind of struggling to form coherent thoughts, because I'm just kind of letting all the visuals kind of soak in. But I do think thematically I have a grip to it. I think that it, like I said, it does delve into, because if you pay attention very closely to its dialogue, because it's a movie that you also have to pay attention very, very closely. It shares similar ideas or similar, approaches to that, like Solaris, which Solaris I loved, but Solaris I also think didn't rely on such attention. It's more on, it's more about the aura of everything, whereas with this, it's a lot more dialogue heavy and a lot more relying on said dialogue and listening to each particular word. And there came a point where the dialogue plays and there's something, or the narration plays, and there's that clarity that was given to me where I went, okay, now I understand the perspective. Now I understand, what this narration refers to. And even before that, though, I was still finding myself fascinated within what was at that point of an odyssey that had the whispers of something self-reflective, because it just has that feeling all the way through. I heard it's I just read up on it, and I heard that it's potentially autobiographical, which makes sense because, like I said, it has this aura to it. It has this feeling to it that is self-reflective, and as the film moved forward and kept moving on, and then when that sense of clarity came in, it just became much more apparent to me that the movie was about such thing, and it chooses to represent such a thing within very dense abstract qualities, which I think can be a make or break for anybody who watches it. For me, for the most part, it worked. I do think, though, it can be tedious. I do think that it is it can be hard to focus in on because of the reliance to said dialogue. But even with that distance that sometimes is created, I still find myself interested because of its visual qualities, because of the poetic the poetic, just delivery of its dialogue, and just the way that it is structured and the way that it's cut. I really like the intent of what Mirror ultimately is doing. I do think, though, that intent can wear on you at some points, but for the most part, I found myself very invested and quite intrigued. It's not as good as Solaris, in my opinion. Solaris, I think, just utilizes all these its components much more satisfyingly. But for what Mirror is doing, and for what it ultimately is about, finally, getting that idea or at least, like that idea finally becoming more clearer as time went on, I did find myself at the end both questioning but also satisfied with what I had watched. So it's a film that you definitely have to sit on. I like I don't know if I'm even giving a complete thought on the film because it is a very dense viewing. But from what I can gather, based on just watching it, I found it to be very, very intriguing, and for the most part, satisfying in its visual-like qualities, in its dialogue, and in just presentation of its ideas. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Mirror, or The Mirror, depending on where depending on it was titled Mirror in the film, so I'll just call it Mirror. Um, but that's my thoughts on Mirror. So you guys let me know your thoughts on Mirror if you guys have seen it. If not, check it out. It's actually very interesting. Um, but uh, but yeah, but I do warn you though that it is dense and it is very abstract type of storytelling. So if you're not into that sort of stuff, don't watch it. But if you're a game, check it out. Um, so so that's it. My screen literally went black as I was finishing up. But thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. And let me know if you've seen the film. And that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.